They say you can tell the weight of a soul by how it walks into a town. Some come dragging chains you can't see. Others come like wind, no sound, no warning. But she came pulling a coffin behind a gray mule, and not a soul in Cotton Ridge spoke for near a full minute after. It was the tail end of October 1879. The last of the yellow leaves still clung to the aspens like stubborn thoughts. The air was sharp that morning, dry enough to crack a knuckle. I was oiling the hinges on the stable gate when I first saw her long coat flapping behind her like a second shadow. Hat pulled low boots, muddy a scar on her cheek that didn't quite match the softness in her eyes. Behind her, the mule wheezed under the weight of that pine wood box, long, narrow, freshly built. She didn't rush, didn't explain. Just tied the reins at the post in front of the old sheriff's office and sat there beside the coffin like she'd been expected. Folks watched from behind shutters. The saloon went quiet. Even old Reverend Pike, halfway into a sermon no one asked for, forgot what verse he was on. And me, I just kept watching, her heart ticking slow. I'd seen riders with wanted posters in their saddlebags, soldiers returning from war with less darkness in their eyes. But this woman, this Mae Ellory, we didn't know her name yet, but we'd never forget it. She carried something heavier than the coffin she dragged in. And though I didn't know it yet, that day would split my life into two clean halves before May, and everything after. They say silence can be comforting, but there's a kind that sets your teeth on edge. The kind where the air's too still, like the land's holding its breath. That's the silence that came after Mae Ellory tied her mule to the post and sat beside that coffin watching the street like it owed her something. She didn't ask for lodging, didn't head to the saloon, just waited till sundown and led that mule coffin and all up the ridge path behind the church where the wind gets caught in the canyon and cries like something left behind. There's an old shack up there. Belonged to Sheriff Amos Bell before he rode west and never came back. Folks say he gambled away his star in Abilene, but truth is, nobody cared enough to ask. May claimed it without a word. No one stopped her. Next morning, smoke curled from the chimney. Someone had split wood. The mule was unhitched and grazing slow behind the cabin fence. She wasn't squatting, she was settling. And I couldn't help but pay attention. Not just out of curiosity, but because some folks carry weight with them. Grief, maybe, or fury that's learned how to walk quiet. Mae Ellory had that kind of gravity, the kind that shifts the dirt when she steps. I saw her again that afternoon. She came down to the general store, bought coffee beans, lamp oil, a spool of thread, and a box of 4440 cartridges. She didn't haggle, didn't speak more than a thank you. But I saw her fingers scarred steady, saw the way she eyed the back door as if noting exits. She wasn't just passing through, she was preparing. That night I couldn't sleep. Hadn't for a while, truth be told. Most nights I sat by the fire nursing black coffee and old memories. Used to be I wore a badge. Back when Cotton Ridge needed one. Back when people still believed a man could set things straight if he stood tall and kept his word. I lost that illusion in a stable full of gun smoke and a 12-year-old boy who took a stray bullet meant for a horse thief. The badge went into the river that night. I never looked for it. But watching Mae Ellory these past 2 days stirred something I thought I'd buried with that tin star. On the third night, I rode out quiet past the ridge. Just meant to check on the old waterline up there. That's what I told myself anyway. But what I found stopped me cold. The cabin window was open. A lantern flickered inside, casting long shadows on the log walls. I heard her voice low, rough edge, speaking in half whispers. I thought maybe she'd found a guest. But when I stepped closer, heart slow hand near my revolver. There was no one else in the room. She was talking to the coffin. Will, she said. That name's soft like a bruise. I'm sorry, I didn't know where else to go. But I promise you, I'll finish it. You're not going to disappear into some ditch like they wanted. You'll be heard. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but sometimes the land itself leans in to listen. That night, even the coyotes kept quiet. She didn't cry. Not once. But I've seen war widows with less sorrow on their faces. She knelt beside that box, rested her palm on the lid like she was checking for a heartbeat. Then she went still, completely still for a long while. I rode back before the moon dipped low, but sleep never came. Next morning, a change came to town. Not in the wind or the sky, but in the way people looked at each other, like something was coming, like trouble had taken root somewhere close, and folks were too afraid to name it. The preacher found the back window of the chapel busted. Said nothing was stolen but the communion wine had been spilled. A quiet message maybe, or just kids looking to raise a little hell. But I felt it. The way the crows circled wider. The way the dogs barked too long at nothing. Even the horses were restless. Mae came into the livery that day, asked for a bag of oats and a whetstone. Paid in coin that looked touched by years. "You planning to be here long?" I asked. She looked at me then. First real look since she arrived. Her eyes were green sharp like pine needles after rain. "As long as it takes," she said. I nodded, though I didn't know what she meant. Didn't ask. Didn't need to. Some folks come looking for a place to die. Mae Ellory came here to finish something. And though I didn't know it yet, what she'd come to finish would drag every secret this town had tried to forget right up into the daylight. Trouble don't always come in on horseback. Sometimes it rolls in with clean boots and the smell of expensive cologne, like it don't quite belong to the land it's walking through. That's how I knew the three men who rode into Cotton Ridge a week after Mae Ellory arrived weren't just passing through. They didn't fit. Their coats were too fine, hats too clean, and the way they carried themselves, well, it wasn't the swagger of gunmen. No, these were the kind that let other men do the killing. They tied off at the saloon and walked in without a word. I was across the way at the blacksmith's waiting on a shoe for one of my mares, and I watched them every step. One had a gold chain draped from his vest, glinting in the sun like a snake's belly. Another carried a slim leather case like a banker would. The third, tall, pale, and broad, had that flat stare I've only seen on bounty hunters and undertakers. I didn't catch their names, but the town would remember them all the same. Word spread fast that they were asking questions quiet at first, like feelers on a spider's web. They showed a sketch of a woman, hat pulled low, coat too big, scar on her cheek, looked an awful lot like Mae. When nobody answered to their liking, they got less polite. That evening, they found Jeremiah Tate, the barkeep at the Dusty Crown, behind the saloon, his face bloodied, teeth scattered like dice in the dirt. He'd told them she'd headed north, lied for her. A fool's move, maybe, but around here we remember who protects who. Mae showed up at the back door of the saloon not long after. Didn't say a word, just knelt beside Jeremiah, cleaned the blood from his face with a cloth, and poured whiskey into a chipped tin cup. Held it while he drank, hands steady as stone. She never asked what happened, and he never told her. That was the thing about Mae Ellory. She didn't need explanations. She saw pain and met it with stillness, not noise. Saw injustice and answered with silence, but not inaction. By the next morning, those three men had moved into the upper rooms of the hotel. Said they were with a private outfit out of Denver. Some security firm tied to Black Hollow Mining Company. Said they were investigating theft. Their badges were brass, not tin. Bought, not earned. The preacher said we should pray. The mayor said to cooperate. But I'd seen this kind of storm before, and I knew the only thing between Cotton Ridge and ruin might be a woman sleeping beside a coffin on the edge of town. That night I couldn't shake it. The feeling, like ants crawling just beneath the skin. So I saddled up, rode the South Trail, out past the switchbacks, where the air goes thinner. Stars were bright, too bright, like they were staring back. I found Mae sitting on the porch of the old cabin, legs crossed, rifle across her lap. The mule was asleep, tied near the fence. The coffin hadn't moved. "I heard they're asking questions," she said without turning. "They're not just asking," I replied. "They're testing how much this town will bend." She nodded. "Most towns do." "But you didn't come here for most towns," I said. She looked at me then full in the face. Firelight from the lantern behind her danced across her eyes, and I saw at the weight. Not just grief, not just anger, purpose, the kind that don't rust. "They buried him in silence," she said finally. "Figured if no one asked questions, it would stay that way. But he kept notes. Ledger entries, maps, names. I have it all." "In the coffin?" I asked. She tapped the lid gently. False bottom. Oak layer under the lining. Will Ellory wasn't just my husband. He was a federal inspector. Cleanest man I ever knew, which made him the most dangerous man in a crooked world. And they killed him for it. She looked up at the sky, quiet. They made it look like an accident. Broken rig cable at the mine. Said I was hysterical. Said women imagine things, but I knew better. Found the entry logs, the shifts that didn't exist, the boys who never came home. Black Hollow's got more blood in its ground than silver. I sat beside her on the porch. Didn't say a word. Some things don't need comment, just witness. "You planning to turn it in?" I finally asked. She nodded. Denver Circuit Judge. 2 weeks from now. He's the only one I trust. Until then, I need to stay invisible. Then you picked the wrong town, I said, thinking of the 3 men in the hotel. No, she replied, voice like steel beneath flannel. I picked the right one. Just didn't know how much noise the truth was going to make. We sat there a while longer, listening to the wind scrape through the pines. Far off, an owl called once and fell silent. Mae stood, stretched her back, and glanced toward the distant hotel. They'll come, she said. Not today, not tomorrow, but they'll come. They always do. And I believed her. Because some people run from their ghosts. Mae Ellory. She was laying bait for hers. Some night's sleep avoids you not out of fear, but out of reverence, like the darkness knows something sacred's moving through and won't dare disturb it. That's how it felt the night Mae Ellory opened the coffin. It was just past midnight when I saw the flicker of lantern light up at the cabin. I hadn't meant to ride out again, but my legs had their own mind. Something in the air told me this wasn't a night for keeping distance. I tethered my mare just shy of the clearing and walked the last bit. Pine needles softened every step. The wind had died, but something heavy hung in the air, like the woods themselves were listening. The door was ajar, and through it I saw her kneeling beside that coffin like it was an altar. The lid sat propped against the wall. The mule lay sleeping outside, twitching in some silent dream. Mae didn't look up as I stepped inside. Her voice when it came was soft. Like it wasn't meant for me, but I was welcome to hear it just the same. He hated small spaces, she said, resting her hand over the still form inside. Said the mountains felt like they could breathe and cities choked him. Inside the coffin lay a man in his 30s maybe. Handsome in that quiet, bookish way. Black hair streaked with dust, a stitched wound on the temple. But peaceful somehow, as if even death respected the cause that got him killed. That's Will, she said. My husband. He worked mines from Colorado to Utah, not with pickaxe and shovel, but with pen and page. He was an inspector, honest, stubborn. He started seeing too many names disappear from the rolls. Too many boys missing come payday. Thought he could fix it. She reached under the body and pulled out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Laid it gently on the table. He found something, she said. A system. Black Hollow wasn't just cutting corners. They were working convicts from territorial prisons off the books. No pay, no records, just ghost labor. Anyone who dug too deep disappeared. I sat down slowly. My knees didn't like cold nights, but this one didn't feel cold anymore. They warned him once, she continued. Sent men in suits with polite threats. He told them to go to hell. 3 days later, he fell into a ravine during a routine inspection. That's what the report said. But I knew Will. He walked the edge of cliffs like most men walk sidewalks. She unwrapped the oilcloth. Inside was a leather-bound ledger, a folded map, and a brass badge. Not hers. He made this for me, she said. Said if anything ever happened, I was to take everything to Judge Larrabee in Denver. Said he'd believe it. I looked down at the page's lines of cramped handwriting. Names, dates, mines, shaft numbers, coded symbols beside certain entries. It was meticulous, precise. The work of a man who knew he wouldn't get a second chance. How far does it reach, I asked, already knowing the answer would weigh more than the box we just opened. All the way up, she whispered. Sheriffs, wardens, judges, even some federal men. Black Hollow's just the front. And you aim to carry this to Denver. I aim to bury the right man in the right place, she said, and finish what he started. She closed the ledger and wrapped it again with the care of a woman folding a flag. I could see her arms tremble just slightly when she lifted it. Not from fear, no. From restraint. From holding in something that had no name but felt like fire. You could have gone straight to the law, I said. Why come here first? Because Cotton Ridge is quiet, she replied. Because it's forgotten. And sometimes forgotten places are where you find the people who remember what matters. I don't know if it was the way she said it or the fact that she meant every word. But I felt something stir in me then, something I'd thought long rusted over. The part of me that used to believe one voice could still matter in the storm. Mae, I said quietly, you know they'll come, don't you? She nodded. They always come when they smell fear. Only this time, I'm the one waiting. I helped her reseal the coffin, not because it was polite, not even because it was right, but because somehow it felt like that lid was more than wood and nails. It was a line being drawn, the kind you don't cross without cost. As I left, she handed me something wrapped in cloth. I opened it by firelight, back at my livery, a page torn from Will's ledger with 3 names circled. All 3 matched the men who'd ridden into town. Mae wasn't hiding. She was marking targets. And suddenly the stillness of the forest didn't feel sacred anymore. It felt like a match waiting on a spark. By the time the snow dusted the ridge, the town had gone quiet again. But this time it wasn't peace. It was waiting. Mae Ellory had moved the coffin inside the old sheriff's office by then. Said it felt more proper. Said if the town was going to face its ghosts, it might as well start where the law once lived. The three men from Black Hollow didn't leave. They took rooms at the hotel and held their meetings behind drawn curtains. I saw the pale one ride out twice at dawn, always toward the ridge trail, always alone. Scouting, maybe, or waiting for something. The sheriff, we still called him, that even if his badge mostly lived in a drawer, came by the livery one morning, face-pale hands shaking. Said he got a letter. No return address. Inside was a drawing of his daughter's schoolhouse. One word written beneath it, careful. He didn't show up again after that. Fear has a way of making even decent men disappear. Mae, on the other hand, became something else entirely. Focused. Cold but not unkind. She started reinforcing the doors of the sheriff's office, nailed shut the back windows, cleared out the old records and turned the cell block into an armory. Folks said she was paranoid. I said she was prepared. I helped her where I could. Hauled lumber, repaired hinges, found a second rifle for her among my father's things, still wrapped in oilcloth, like it was waiting for her all along. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. There was a rhythm to what we were building. Not just a defense, but a line in the dirt. And then just after dusk on the seventh day, they came. 6 riders. Coats black as burnt ash. Faces covered in dust and cold. They didn't ride like hired guns, they rode like soldiers. Trained. Coordinated. They didn't ask for Mae. They didn't ask anything. They just surrounded the sheriff's office and waited. It was the bartender Jeremiah Tate, his face still bruised from the last encounter, who ran down Main Street shouting the alarm. Folks gathered quick. Some ran to their homes, some to the chapel. But no one stepped forward, except me. And a girl no older than 15, clutching her father's hunting rifle and shaking hands. Mae stood on the porch of the sheriff's office, lantern beside her boot, both hands resting on the rifle barrel like a preacher behind a pulpit. She didn't flinch when they called out her name. Mae Ellory, a voice barked, smooth, loud, practiced. You're holding property that doesn't belong to you. Step out now and you'll be given a fair hearing. She didn't answer. He waited. Then he laughed. I see, he said. You think this town's gonna bleed for you? Think again. I stepped up beside her, shotgun in hand, and said, Mister, if you're looking for fear, I suggest you knock somewhere else. They didn't like that. The shots came, quick warning rounds meant to scatter us. Windows shattered. The bell at the chapel cracked in half. Folks screamed. Horses bolted. But Mae stood still, didn't even blink. Then she turned to me and said, we hold till morning. And I believed her. That night was fire and lead. We blacked out the windows and took positions. She handed me rounds without looking. I covered the north alley while she watched the front. They tested the walls first. Fired slow. Sent one man creeping close. She dropped him with one clean shot to the thigh. Didn't kill him, just marked him. Let the others know she could. Every hour they pressed harder. At midnight they tried the rear entrance. Jeremiah showed up with a pistol and a lantern. Said he couldn't sleep. Said if he was going to die, it might as well be for something. We let him in. Around 3 a.m., they tried fire. Threw kerosene against the side and lit a torch. But Mae had thought of that. The snow melt, in barrels, the sandbags. We smothered the flame before it caught. They weren't ready for that. By dawn, we counted 4 down. 1 dead, 2 limping into the woods, 1 who never moved again. The others retreated behind the hotel waiting. The streets were torn up. Siding ripped from buildings. Smoke hung low over the square. But the sheriff's office still stood, and so did Mae. She sat beside the coffin again, bandaging her arm where a shard of glass had cut deep. Didn't cry, didn't groan. Just tied it off and said, it's not over. I asked her how she knew. She said, because justice doesn't break this easy. And somehow I believed her again. The thing about dawn is it don't care what happened in the dark. It just shows up, cold, bright, and honest. And that morning it lit up a town that looked more like a war map than anything else. Shell casings glittered in the dust like frost. Smoke curled off rooftops where chimneys once stood. The windows of the chapel were gone. The bell-cracked pews turned sideways from where folks had dragged them for cover. And across from it all, still standing, the old sheriff's office, scarred but unbroken. Inside, Mae Ellory sat beside the coffin like a sentry at a tomb. Her bandage bled through. Her coat was torn, but her eyes, Lord, those eyes, burned like green fire in the half-light. She looked at me and said, "They'll come again." Yeah, I nodded. But this time they ain't coming to test our walls. They're coming to bury us. She didn't argue. We had 10 rounds left between us. A half box of shells, 2 pistols, and what was left of our strength. Jeremiah was still with us. Pale, tired, but alive. Said he'd stay until the end if that's what this was. And it nearly was. Just before sunrise they came. Not on horseback this time. They came on foot, spread out rifles ready, moving with the cold calm of men who'd done this before. I counted 5, maybe more in the back. Leading them was the one they called Sutter. Tall, clean, wore a long brown duster and gloves too nice for a man paid to kill. He stepped into the middle of Main Street and called out, "Mae Ellory, you've got 5 seconds to come out with the ledger and your hands up." She didn't answer. He took another step forward. "Last chance. You give us what you got and we walk away. You don't and we turn this town into ash." I stepped to the window and leveled my shotgun. "Then come burn it, you bastard." Silence fell. And then, fire and lead. The first bullet shattered the doorframe. Mae returned a shot through the gap between boards, clean and fast. One of the men went down yelling. Jeremiah laid down cover fire as 2 tried to circle the east wall. I moved to the back, caught sight of a boot moving between barrels and fired. Missed by inches. The world turned to thunder. Bullets cracked, wood split beams showered us with splinters and dust. Mae moved like a ghost reload fire duck. Her braid had come loose, swinging like a whip across her back. Blood trickled from her forehead, but she didn't slow down. I'd seen men break under less, but she never broke. They tried to rush us twice. Once through the front, once through the holding cell in the back. We turned them both. One dropped his rifle and screamed he'd had enough. He got dragged back by the others like a wounded dog. We held till the sun climbed higher, but we were running dry. Judd May said, breath ragged, "We won't last another push." I looked at her, eyes hard. But there was something else there now, not just purpose, something quieter, acceptance. "Then we don't wait," I said. She gave a tired smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." We loaded what we had left. She tied her coat tight, grabbed Will's badge and the ledger. I slung the shotgun over my shoulder and kicked open the back door. Smoke filled the alley. Mae led the way. We cut through the alley behind the mercantile, ducking low, using broken wagons and water barrels for cover. 2 of them saw us and fired, but missed wide. We made it to the front of the livery. My old mare was still there, bless her heart, and Mae's mule 2 wide-eyed ears back. She loaded the ledger into her saddlebag, fastened it tight, then looked at me. "I need to get this out of town," she said. "You hold him, I ride." "You sure you'll make it?" She paused, then handed me Will's badge. "Make sure they remember who he was." And then she was gone, riding like lightning dust and fire trailing behind. I stood alone. 1 shotgun, 1 badge. And a lie I whispered to myself that maybe I could hold them off just long enough. But fate sometimes has a little mercy left. Just as the riders regrouped to follow her trail, thunder rolled not from the sky, but from hooves. 20 men riding fast from the Ridge Road. Federal, clean uniforms, guns drawn. Judge Larrabee had sent them. They came in hard rifles, cracking orders, shouted. Sutter's men scattered like ants, some taking down others, dropping weapons. It was over in minutes. And when the dust settled, Mae Ellory was already a mile away, ledger riding beside her. Mae Ellory never came back to Cotton Ridge, but I reckon she never really left either. Folks talk about her like you talk about a wind that knocked your hat off, once surprised you, humbled you, and reminded you that something stronger's always moving out there. Even now, some say they see her silhouette along the ridge, when the fog rolls in that same mule plodding along behind. She sent a letter weeks later, said the ledger reached Judge Larrabee, said indictments were filed, mines shut down, names named. Some of the guilty slipped away, sure, but enough were caught that the blood trail finally ended. She didn't say where she was headed next, just signed it for Will and for the ones no one remembered. That coffin stayed in town for a spell. Empty now. We buried it proper beneath the tall pine behind the chapel. No name on the stone, just a carved circle and a cross through it. Mae said it was a symbol Will used in his notes. Meant buried truth. Funny thing is, after all the fire and blood, what lingered most wasn't the gunshots. It was what Mae left behind. A sense that sometimes even a quiet soul can shake loose the dust from a town's tired bones. That courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it just knocks once and waits for someone to open the door. And me, I went back to the livery, still oil the hinges, still talk to the horses. But every now and then, I catch myself standing a little straighter, watching the ridge, listening for her boots. Life's full of folks who come and go, but once in a rare while, someone rides through who reminds you what we bury in silence. Someone brave will one day dig up and speak aloud. If someone ever walked into your life and changed you quietly, deeply, leave a comment, share their name. Maybe the wind will carry it farther than we think. And if this story sat with you a while, gave you something to hold on to, go on and subscribe. We've got more stories for you about the ones this world forgot and the ones still riding toward the light. Until then, hold fast and listen close. The West still whispers.